Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly. Please use the navigation thing below to get you where you want to go, and holy moly, what a week for Blizzard. Now, if this were a dark comedy of sorts, and it certainly is some kind of TV show, we're at the part just after the big bad CEO villain rallies the world against him, only to be set up for an almost comical downfall, and now we sort of pan back to the smaller stories with minor characters. Okay, employees aren't minor characters, but I'm trying to hold on to the analogy here, and I lost it. Sorry. For those of you who've watched me in the past, that's like 9 of you people, you might recall during last season's arc, the reveal of the Blizzard lawsuits, I said that the company is going through its own sort of self-reckoning, the fallout of its hubris, and the beginning of a transformative period. The rot in the company would slowly and painfully be excised, and at the end of it, we as viewers, I'm trying this analogy again, we as viewers clearly can hope that a brighter future is ahead for our antagonist. Well, not quite. In joint statements from Activision Blizzard and Microsoft and every click-hungry content creator on the planet, Microsoft is going to buy the publisher and all of its studios for a massive $69 billion. Nice. Billionaire jackass Bobby Kotick is expected to stay on at least until the transition is over, but vague statements from pretty much every camp indicate that this is not a guarantee. Meanwhile, Xbox boss Phil Spencer is expected to oversee the entire unit, which does make Kotick's role a bit redundant. We should also consider insider sources who paint a very different picture of this buyout, asserting that Kotick did not want this deal. He was hoping for a bigger paycheck from the likes of Meta/Facebook, but his own brand of directors wasn't on board. Get it? You know, bored and they're wrong. Anyway, it's quite the turnaround from a few months ago in the face of game delays, followed by a scandal when the board decided that they would stand behind Kotick and put their trust in him. Maybe though, maybe it's because by that point the board already put him in his place. But in the face of a dwindling stock price, presumably caused by a scandal of a cover-up of misconduct that goes back years, maybe the board was finally like, hey, you know what? Time to cash out, despite Bobby Kotick's protest. Enough of him though, like ill, and we're gonna get to some WoW news pretty soon, but I want to talk about the potential winners and losers of this deal. I say potential because like everyone, we don't know jack about what's really going to happen to Activision Blizzard or World of Warcraft and its team and so on and so forth. But I want to share some thoughts, get your imaginations going so you can be like, huh, okay, that might be a thing. Or, oh my god, did he just say that? We might have fun. Probably the biggest overall winner from this, Microsoft. They're going to expand their library of games and users by a metric crap ton. Statements from Phil Spencer strongly indicate that current deals and contracts will be honored, meaning that the likes of Call of Duty and other Activision games are not going to be suddenly locked out of the PlayStation ecosystem. But in the near future, Blizzard is going to be referred to as a first-party studio under Microsoft, which sounds weird, right? At least until we remember that Blizzard was always owned by somebody. But in this case, it's one of the big 3 platform holders. Another big winner, at least mostly, gamers. I mean, look, some of y'all wanted Activision to be bought out just for the sake of getting that one guy out of there. And now we can look forward to a new generation of memes blaming company mergers as to why Shadow Priests never get brought into Mythic Plus. Most of the speculation is on the Xbox Game Pass, a monthly subscription that lets you get access to a ton of games, including first-party Microsoft games. I'm not the biggest fan of having all of these monthly subscription services being jammed down my throat, but well, $10 a month for a bunch of games feels like a pretty good deal compared to like, what, $20 to $60 for one game purchase. But what if, for example, World of Warcraft stayed at a $15 subscription, but for $20 I can get my WoW sub and the PC Game Pass, which includes the entire Activision Blizzard library. Maybe as a bundle? Maybe that's a value for me. Now for a potential loser to this, the WoW token and people who use it. Is there going to be a future for it in the Blizzard ecosystem? No one else really does something like this, and despite all the pay-to-win grumbling over in the comments below, it is making Blizzard a lot of money to the tune of what is basically a $20 subscription. The question is, does Microsoft want to embrace that and pick up that money? And I'm not sure. If they did, the safest bet would be to just keep it in the current ecosystem. I mean, if it's not totally broke, don't fix it. The cold reality of gaming overall is that the gray market is a thing, no matter where you go. Blizzard just decided to shamelessly profit off of what would be inevitable anyway. Because what would happen if the WoW token was suddenly put to death? Like, all of a sudden, it's gone. Probably not that. The landscape of carries and boosting wouldn't exactly go away, but it would reshape. I mean, people who know how to make gold, they're not going to be affected at all. People without access to a WoW token will take that 20 or so bucks that they would spend there and go to underground markets. The numbers may shift, but culturally, I don't think anything would change. Now, that's just one possibility, but what if Microsoft were to expand on the WoW token somehow? Like, imagine if you could redeem the WoW token for Battle.net balance like you usually could, but this balance could then be used in the Xbox marketplace for your Game Pass subscription, or anything that's available in their store. That sounds kind of cool and very frightening too, especially if you could buy anything on the store, because that would cause the price of the WoW token to absolutely skyrocket with demand. If World of Warcraft is the only method of turning your in-game efforts into digital cash, tons of gamers would be flocking to the World of Warcraft, but for the wrong reasons. It would be primarily to generate gold, to buy a token, to fund their balance, to buy games that are not World of Warcraft. Those people would be here because WoW is like now their source of gaming income. It would almost literally be their job. And no one knows the fate of the token, but if the token is going away, the second we find out, the supply of tokens will dry up like almost instantly, thanks to folks wanting to cap out on game time before all of that goes away. And what if the WoW token became like an Xbox token or something? Like, what if the WoW token is just a precursor to the entire Xbox ecosystem taking part on this scheme? Imagine Halo Infinite having its own token system. Like, really do that. Please imagine it, because I know nothing about Halo Infinite. Elder Scrolls Online is run by ZeniMax. ZeniMax is now owned by Microsoft, and maybe the token can expand there too. So I can't say if this is good or bad, but there are possibilities there, and we have really overactive imaginations. Another potential loser from this merge? This thing, Battle.net. Battle.net has roughly 25 or so million monthly active users. Xbox Game Pass has 25 or so million subscribers. Now that's a lot of money between both camps. The question is if Battle.net is going to be absorbed into the Xbox ecosystem, or will they kind of coexist? Personally, compared to other launchers, I find the Battle.net thing really, really friendly, mostly because there aren't like a billion games trying to fight for attention. But Battle.net is more than just the client, it's the users. And in a soon-to-be nightmare reality, some very smart people in a very dark room are going to stress themselves the heck out, trying to merge these accounts together somehow. If that's the intention, of course. Battle.net is also the big brother that detects and reports malicious behavior, like bots and other illegal third-party stuff. So who does it better, Microsoft or the Battle.net team? No idea. And finally, Battle.net is the people who make Battle.net. I'm talking about jobs, developers, engineers, project managers, and so on who make this thing work. If Battle.net isn't needed anymore, will these people have a place to go? Or will they have to relocate to keep their job? Do they need to go permanently remote, or will they be pushed out? And speaking of, there are the workers themselves. Are there winners and losers? Absolutely, there's going to be a little bit of both. There are going to be redundancies. Battle.net might be a redundancy. The CEO is hopefully a redundancy. No doubt at the executive level, heads are going to roll, or maybe they'll be shuffled around. Human resource folks? Okay, they might be in trouble. But not every position is going to be considered excessive, I don't think. We're not going to see the entire World of Warcraft team just get fired and replaced overnight, and with some new leadership coming in, there may be more opportunities to hear ideas like reviving franchises that Activision Blizzard left on the shelf. So instead of just layoffs, maybe we'll see a lot of reshuffling of creative positions to support brand new incubation projects. Working under the Microsoft umbrella might come with restrictions, but it could also open up some new technological opportunities that weren't there before. Most importantly, though, it's up in the air how Microsoft is going to handle the unrest within Activision Blizzard. Just recently, Raven Software declared the Game Workers Alliance Union and is waiting to see if ABK leadership is going to acknowledge it, huge doubt, or if they're going to force a company-wide vote. Whatever comes out of it is something that Phil Spencer is going to have to deal with when he takes the reins sometime next year. Overall, my hopes are that when the merge does happen, the absolute minimum is done to the likes of Battle.net and other things. Maybe have a separate thing for your Battle.net friends and your Xbox friends. Also, preferably, don't change the WoW token, or at worst, demote it, downgrade it to only work with a WoW subscription and World of Warcraft digital goods and services only. But a WoW sub and a Game Pass bundle? I gotta say, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds like such an easy way for gamers to expand their ecosystem of games. At the moment though, all we have is the announcement, the insider statement, and a really vague statement from solo top dog Mike Ybarra, who says that we have some exciting things to announce and I'll be sharing more next week. This is with regards to content and games and not just this whole buyout thing. So there's just a lot of speculation. And that's where we're at. So I want to end this by getting you thinking of the bright side of things. What are the cool things that you imagine happening out of this buyout? Maybe a Warcraft/Fallout crossover? Because dude, if player housing turns out to be a vault and tanks wear power armor, I am sold. And now, the floor is yours. Let's move on to the 9.2 build. We have a new one to look at with some additions that have at least taken me by almost total surprise. First, let's look at the Encrypted affix, now testable on the Peter. Throughout a dungeon, 3 ads will be included with a bunch of the existing packs. Killing all 3 will spawn an ad that will give you a powerful buff. It might be a cooldown reduction boost, a haste buff, or a 10-second shroud plus speed buff. Which buff you get depends on which of the 3 ads you kill first, and it's activated once you slay the bigger ad that spawns. So the affix itself is fairly simple, but the game of it is all about the strategy that you want to employ. You might want to end up jumping from pack to pack, popping like these mini bloodlusts on the way. You might decide that a certain pack can be skipped. This way you can skip additional packs when your invisibility pot isn't available. Cooldowns might not be up, but maybe they're almost up, so maybe you want to get a different buff right before the boss, so those cooldowns are available. Quick impression is that it's not as simplistic as the Tormented buff, where at best, the group would decide which buffs to take to avoid unnecessary overlap. I still think it's way better than whatever the first season buff was called. I'm not even gonna look it up. It just sucked. Really bad in my opinion. But to me, this new Encrypted buff, it almost feels like what a proper dungeon should always feel like, and let me explain that. Venturing into a dungeon, it's like a mini adventure with your crew. You go in, you beat up bad guys, you preferably use the environment and find advantages, whether it's line of sight or whether you find something on the ground to club someone with. These are in Shadowlands dungeons now, with the likes of Kyrian weapons in Necrotic Wake and more broadly the Covenant-specific buffs found in each dungeon. It's sort of like, I guess it's also sort of like the Sanctum of Domination raid, where you pick up weapons while you're fighting trash, you slam into them, and then die because you ripped aggro off the tank and they weren't very interested in saving you. This is not the same thing, but I kind of get that vibe with this effects, except that there's a bit more strategy involved. Next, we're finally seeing Cosmic Flux drop from various sources like treasures and daily content. Without a cap, there's no limit to how much Flux you can get other than the availability of who or what you get your Flux from. For example, treasures. There are 2 varieties of treasures. There are regular boxes, nests, and other garbage highlighted in purple. You can get a little bit of Flux there, but there are specifically named treasures too. They give plenty of Flux. However, you can only get the bonus Flux the first time. One and done. Kind of a bummer. As a reminder, Flux is used to buy legendary stuff from the Quartermaster. Now, I don't know if it's testable yet, but you should also be able to trade Flux plus gear to get equivalent tier pieces. Hopefully soon we'll find out more about the creation catalyst and how much Flux we have to give. That's about all we have so far, but I imagine that you'd be able to use your Flux for other things too, and maybe we'll get a Flux vendor in a hotfix. Side note, there's item level 246 gear that you can buy from a vendor, but you don't hand over Flux, but these things called Sand Fury relics. Now, I find it a little bit odd to have a very specific currency for only one vendor as opposed to giving them your Flux. What really surprised me with this build though was the addition of another vendor who sells item level 226 gear tokens, tradable account wide and bought for the low cost of 500 anima a pop. This reminds me that next week I plan on doing my usual thing where I take a freshly leveled character and throw it into the gauntlet so we can find out if a Lobby can survive patch 9.2. Spoiler alert though, this PTR build gives a path to how this is very, very possible. I want to point out, because there seems to be, I don't know if it's misinformation or not, but I just want to, share my thoughts on this, that the primary reason for the existence of this vendor is to have an easy path for alts or new players to just jump right in. Now, this might be hard to believe, but not everyone here is a cutting-edge Keystone hero with 20 alts who's been playing WoW for 17 years, although we're way more important than them. Kidding. Not everything is made with us in mind, but this is terrific for new folks and people who are trying to get back into the game and want to give a big fat middle finger to Korthia. Don't get me wrong, 226 gear isn't like great, but my project character is a priest with an item level of 129 and a heart of gold. That's a goblin joke if I'm allowed to make race jokes. This character didn't take advantage of any alt benefits aside from covenant switching because I made mistakes, as well as flying because, well, I'm not here to practice masochism. I'm just trying to, run an experiment here. But spoiler alert, even now, from the perspective of a brand new player, you bet your ass I'm going to use this 3500 anima that he was able to accrue for some easy upgrades, because outside of this shield is death. So, this will help. And for those of us with crappy alts, I mean, come on, this is a no-brainer. Now is a great time to save up on anima so you can supercharge your alts and get them right into the action or whatever it is that alts can do in Zereth Mortis. I honestly don't know what it is that alts need to do in Zereth Mortis. And that's the show. Just kidding. During post-production, developers responded to a post on the PTR forum with regards to double legendaries in 9.2 being locked behind a revered reputation requirement. So let's talk about it. Players have been pretty one-sided on this issue, that it takes way too long to get, but more importantly, it takes way too much required grinding each and every day in order to obtain them. The team's response was pretty candid, so I'll start with the changes. First, the belt and the memory have an added requirement. Getting either of them will require you to complete Chapter 7 of the 9.2 campaign, which is doable starting on the 5th week of the patch, which means time gating. The belt will no longer have a rep requirement behind it, but the memory will still have that requirement for revered reputation. As you know, unlocking that will unlock the belt's craftability on any slot, and this is shared account-wide. So this covers a lot of bases. The grind is not absolutely required, although some players will need to rethink their legendary planning if they want the legendary but choose to not deal with the reputation building for the ease of being able to craft this thing wherever you like. Also, no one will have access to this legendary until the 5th week, no matter what you do, which curbs super degenerate behavior from competitive players. So that much is off of their plates. As for Blizzard's reasoning, it's pretty simple. Quoting from the post, it's so that they can tune the raid at a difficulty that allows early progression to be bolstered by additional power once players start hitting stumbling blocks. If this power was instead available to your characters on the first day, tuning would have to take that into account for people who expect the first few weeks to be challenging, and that in turn would deprive many raids of what we think will be a fun and enjoyable boost in power after striving as far as they can without it. Also, it's important to us that there's a pretty level playing field with the Enlightened Legendary in terms of when different players obtain it. We want it to be an impactful moment of growth for your characters, getting to change the rules of how they play the game for the rest of Eternity's End. Part of me disagrees with this because time gating almost never feels very great, but that would also be me demonstrating my not listening to the statement that I just read out loud. It seems clear to me that at least the team is designing the raids, notably Mythic difficulty, to be doable with only one legendary, at least for the best teams in the world. They don't want to have a repeat of Shards of Domination in 9.1, where some people were able to make a set, some were not, and that caused some bosses to fall over faster than expected. More importantly, though, during that race, it resulted in a lot of these players, because top raiders are players too, to get super pissed off when they couldn't complete a set because that caused a significant performance gap that ended up being totally outside their control. I'm sorting through my feelings here, and I feel like if the legendary was available right away, that would feel cool to put it on to kind of complete my character, even though I probably won't have a full tier set bonus and all the other stuff. And that kind of gives me that legendary cape vibes from Miss Pandaria. But as the statement asserts, the raid would also be designed with this increased performance in mind. There wouldn't be any sort of contextual feel of a before and after I get this second legendary, at least not in the raid. Like, I would hecka feel it in Mythic Plus, since shard bonuses never worked there. And I'm not a world-class player. My team and I are probably barely going to complete the SFO raid on normal by the time the legendary is obtainable, so it'll be a nice bump when we start moving up to heroic. And I want to make that clear, the World of Warcraft commands a very, very wide spectrum of players, and the same goes for its raiding population. Time gating is not great, but it's like the 4th week of Season 3 as well. I think that I would survive. I'm glad that I don't have to commit to a daily grind if I don't want to, and it's nice to know that top raiders have that much less to stress over. If it wasn't for announcements where some of these things weren't transparent, like double legendaries and things like that, as well as not having a PTR where we would see and feel these things and expect them and debate over them and other such things, and we just got them when they were intended. Like, if we did get a timely release of this legendary belt and memory after completing chapter 7 of the campaign, like as it is right now without our input, and we didn't know this until that time came, would we have noticed? I'm not sure, but that's the show. We're starting to run out of things to test. I think all that's left is the creation catalyst I mentioned earlier. We're at the edge of 9.2 being what's called feature complete, meaning that all that's left to do is polish, and boy, there is a lot of polish that needs to be done. Next week, I hope to cover what I predict are going to be the main pain points of this patch, and we'll see if they're addressed. And if they're not, we'll find out if I'm right. And that's not going to feel good. I don't want to be right that many players are going to be angry about a thing. And I'll also try to push a bit more content with my thoughts on WoW's game design, the discourse and the negativity and the etceteras that people have been airing out lately. It's going to be a bunch of hot takes as usual, but I hope that you share a bit of your time to have a listen. And with that, we conclude the week by giving many, many thanks to the party over on Twitch. I do apologize that I missed the Thursday stream, but I'll be good next time, daddy. Also, thanks to our valued patrons, including some newcomers, yay, including Justin and Michael. You all keep the wheels running, and I appreciate every bit of support. Don't forget to touch that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content, and soon, 9.2 tips and guides. We'll see you next week, and until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.